Thank you. Hymn number 269 in your green book. Hymns 269.
Genesis chapter 9. Genesis chapter 9. We've got a few things to clean up there. So Genesis chapter 9, and we'll read again from verse 20 and following. I'm going to put up here on the board, though, real quick, the name of Noah's 3 sons. Who can tell me the names? What are the names? Shem, Ham, and Japheth are the 3 sons. Very good. Who can tell me what the names mean? Oh. Shem means fame, good, or renown. Ham means hot, good. Oh, somebody took notes, or you remember that? Oh, look at that, like a steel trap. and Japheth. And large. Very good. I am so proud of you guys. That was really well done. Yeah, so we started talking about these three men and their families and the family situation there. Let's read about it now, this curious story. And it feels like something's missing from the story as we read it. Would someone take us from verse 20 down to verse 29, the end of the chapter?
Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward. And they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
Alrighty, thank you, Michelle, for walking us back into this odd story. We talked about how there was probably a delay from the time of Noah coming out of the ark until he had this vineyard ready, because it would have taken time to plant it and till it and do all of these things. So it's not just some sort of reaction to the time in the ark. But Noah makes wine, he gets drunk, and he is laying uncovered in the tent. And the son, the second son that's typically listed, Ham, comes in and sees his father. Now, after our lesson last week, I went home and I consulted some commentaries to see if there was something unusual or special going on here in the Hebrew that might give us more of a clue as to what's happening in this story. And I have to tell you, there's really not anything sticking out that's unusual in the Hebrew. The word that's used to describe the son seeing Noah it's the most common word for seeing in the Bible. It's everywhere. It's just the common word for see. So I don't think there's anything going on behind that. The other terms and things that are there are it's all pretty straightforward. It just feels like as you read this story that Moses intentionally left something out of the story. Something inappropriate has happened that upsets Noah, and he responds sharply to his son. Let's look here. Let's see. The other boys, they do not want to see their father in this condition, and they intentionally walk backward to cover him. Verse 24, when Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son, Ham is listed as the youngest son here, had done to him, he said, cursed be not Ham, but Canaan. Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. And then he continues with a blessing. Let's talk about blessing and cursing here for a minute. But the object of his curse is Canaan. Who descends from this Canaan? The Canaanites. The Canaanites, right? What happens with the Canaanites later in the Bible?
Well, the Jewish people come in the land of Canaan and fight.
Okay, there's a fight. This is the book of Joshua. and Judges are all a part of this. Actually, it's an ongoing thing even to the times of the kings. There continues to be a struggle with these Canaanites. But the goal was to drive them out of the land, okay, that they should not be there. And in the law of Moses, he goes into great detail about the sins of the Canaanites and how offensive they are to God. I think you can read some of this. I think it's around Leviticus chapter 18, part of what they call the Holiness Code. And there is listed all kinds of unusual sexual practices that were apparently current among these Canaanites. So they are put under this curse and under this prohibition from God to send them out of the land. And this is why they come up. They come up immediately there in verse 18. Ham was the father of Canaan. You remember who Moses is and when Moses is writing. He's many centuries later. He's writing this after the time that Israel was in Egypt. And he is thinking about going in and getting rid of the Canaanites out of the land. So this is all Moses writing about the story of Noah in this time of transition for Israel. And he brings in this part of the story, I think, to illustrate to his fellow Israelites, there's a reason we're kicking these people out. There's a reason we shouldn't be mingling with them. And that's a part of the reason this particular odd story about the situation with Noah gets recorded. Go ahead.
Canaan is a lot later than this. How come they're mentioning so much at this point?
Yeah.
Is it a reason because Ham is his father? To me, it doesn't make sense why he's mentioning unless there's a reason for it.
Yeah. Noah does something that to us might seem inappropriate.
Okay.
The father sins, and it's his descendant that gets cursed.
Okay. Yeah.
To us, that doesn't quite make sense, does it? It doesn't. That's not maybe what we would do. But this, and that's not to say that God wanted Noah to do this. It's something that Noah does.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just like it's not to say that God wanted Noah to get drunk,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But it's something that Noah does. It's an odd thing here in the family. One of the commentators I read this week said something I found kind of fascinating. He describes this situation as a second fall into sin. So we have Adam and Eve fall into sin before the flood at the beginning of creation. And here the righteous man Noah and his family, right, whom God has preserved, they get off the boat and they step in it. And all of the trouble is going to start over in different ways. It's going to come again because mankind, even this righteous Noah and his family, are sinful. Okay? So that seems to be a part of the reason it's recorded here. Why Noah targets Canaan, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah.
I mean, if we were in a similar situation, you would hope that your children would do that for you.
You mean what Shem and Japheth
Yeah,
did?
yeah. Cover
Yeah.
them up and prevent further shame
Yes.
or whatever have you. Why do you think he took it so offensively?
Well, the thing that Ham does is that instead of covering for his father, so to speak,
Yeah.
covering his shame, he amplifies it, doesn't he? He goes out and talks about this in front of his brothers.
Yeah.
And Noah is offended by this. Think about your mistakes in life for a minute.
Or not.
I didn't say talk about them. I'm not asking for a confession here, okay? But we all make mistakes in life. That happens with all of us. And to have those amplified is painful. It's painful in life. And this is apparently what Ham is about. It's interesting. Ham goes on. I gave you a little chart there. I'll talk about that in a minute. But Ham, the descendants of Ham are the Egyptians. And of course, these Canaanites as well. Think about who's writing the book. It's Moses, right? What's Moses' big trouble? Getting the people of Israel out of Egypt, right? So he's kind of giving a family history here of how things went wrong between people. The name Canaan in Hebrew means someone who is subject. Okay? Someone who's like a slave and subjected to others. And so Moses is reflecting on this whole story and this whole situation, and I think he's including this because of the circumstances of Israel. Israel has been enslaved. Israel has been in Egypt, right? Under Ham's descendants. And they're going to now go and fight with these Canaanites to get them out of the land as God has asked. And he gives them some bad propaganda. He tells some of the dirt behind these families in history. And it's a warning. It's a warning to all of us, isn't it? About our own lives, our own mistakes, about how we treat our family members, right? How we interact with those family members. So it's an odd story because it makes you think. It just feels like there's something missing as he tells the story about the depth of offense that Ham causes. But Moses chose not to record more about it. So we take it as this is enough of the message that we need to see what God is trying to say to us, which would be what? What were the lessons that we might say we should draw from this? Gossip's not good, right? Don't broadcast your family sins.
Don't point a finger at someone.
Don't get drunk.
Don't point a finger at someone.
Oh, sorry, I just was pointing my finger at you.
I didn't mean that. There you go.
I was just acknowledging that you were the next one speaking. Yeah, be careful about pointing the finger at others.
Because it seemed like Moses was trying to protect, when you brought it up, Moses wrote this a long time ago.
Mm.
And all this stuff came, and people would point, oh, Noah wasn't such a righteous person.
Mm.
You know,
Oh, okay.
because of this happened. And you point fingers, and you don't need to be pointing a finger at somebody.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing how the Bible talks about its heroes. Noah's a hero in the Bible. King David's a hero in the Bible. Moses is a hero in the Bible. We could go on and on. The Bible will tell you about their faults. And I think it does that to teach us. It's an instruction to us that we are not perfect. Everybody's a sinner. Everybody needs God's grace. And so we're being instructed in this way. Let's talk about this before I was going to get on to something else. Let's talk about the difference between curse and cuss. I always go over this with the catechism students so we can get this right. What's the difference between those two things?
Curse, you use God's name
Okay.
or something like that.
Yes. Yes, it can certainly involve God's name. Or if we look at other religions, it can involve other gods. Okay? What's this?
Using slang?
Okay. Inappropriate slang. Inappropriate slang, right?
Yeah.
It's usually unclean talk, okay, is what cussing is. And there are other parts of the Bible that discourage that, okay? But here it's talking about cursing, and when you curse something, you're calling down judgment or destruction on it, okay? It's like you want God to destroy something, and that's what cursing is, more specifically. Okay, you see, it's very different from cussing in that respect. Go ahead.
On that line, it just made me think. I worked with a guy at Lowe's that it always troubled me. Every time you turn, anytime something happened, GD, he was always taking the Lord's name in vain.
Yes.
And I would always say something to him, and he would say, "Well, I'm not cussing, and blah blah blah." And I said, "Well, how do you get that?" And he goes, "Well, I'm upset that something bad happened, and I'm just asking God to damn it." That was his logic.
That was how he was
And
seeing
I was
it.
like, that's not how it works.
So what you're describing, Mike, is an example of cursing,
Yes.
right? You're calling down God's judgment and destruction on something.
That's what he was asking in his philosophy.
Yeah, often when people say those things, though, I think more along the lines of what you were saying about using God's name in vain,
Yeah.
they're just emoting,
Yeah.
right? They're just throwing their emotions out, but they're inappropriately using God's name to do it.
Yeah.
Other people will say things like, "Oh, sugar," right?
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Or fudge, right? Yeah, go ahead,
My
Jim.
aunt told me when I was little, she said, "Jimmy, cursing is a sign of ignorance."
Yeah. Yeah, if it's certainly a sign of being out of control, isn't it? You just, you limited vocabulary, and you're just kind of blowing your emotions around.
Can't think of anything else.
You can't. It's like you're not thinking. Yeah. Yeah. So these are all reasons to be careful with our language, and calling down the judgment of God on somebody or something. Pretty serious matter, right? Is there a place for cursing? Will pointed out at the end of our lesson last time, God uses this language. In Deuteronomy chapter, I think it's 28, beginning at verse 15, God warns Israel, if you go astray from my law, here are the curses that are going to follow you. And he gives a huge list. He's allowed, right, yeah. It's his judgment, isn't it? It's his judgment. So he brings out all of these different things that Israel does wrong, and you'll be cursed here, and you'll be cursed there, and God's really thorough about that. And then he has, when they get into the promised land, one gets on one side of Israel gets on one mountain, the other side gets on the other mountain, and they repeat these things to each other. They have a liturgy of blessing and cursing. That'd be fun to do some Sunday, wouldn't it?
Get on the sides of the street.
Yeah.
The left side.
Yeah, who's going to be on the left, who's going to be on the right? But cursing is certainly found throughout other parts, especially of the Old Testament, and it's an expression of God's law, God's judgment. You remember what God says to the serpent after it tempts Adam and Eve. Cursed are you, and on your belly you're going to go, right? He uses that expression. He warns Adam and says, the ground is going to be cursed for your sake. And that's why all these thorns and thistles come up, right? You're upset about the weeds in your garden? Be careful not to do this. Don't add to the problem. Pull them. Bag them. And so Noah here is speaking in this angry way and calling down God's judgment on his son, and by speaking it over, I'm not sure how many descendants out Canaan is, but it's one of the descendants there. And then Moses is recording all of this because in a sense these things get fulfilled on Egypt and on Canaan later, don't they? The curse almost acts like a prophecy of God's judgment on Egypt and Canaan in the future. So that seems to be the sense of what's going on here. And then he says, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem." Who are Shem's descendants? The Shemites. Okay. We get our word Semitic from this, okay? So it's all of your Israelites and your Arabic people and a number of others there. I gave you that chart that kind of divides some of that up, so you can see the language families on the one side, and then there's a map that we're going to be, you can look at as we read chapter 10. But Abraham, who's the big star that emerges in chapter 12, is a descendant of Shem, and that's the blessed family line. You all from the beginning. After Abel gets killed, the next the child that gets born who carries forward the blessing, whose name is not coming into my head. Seth, thank you. So that's the blessed line, and here Shem is the blessed line, and from that will come Abraham and his line. And then Japheth, he's going to be enlarged, and he's got this blessing hanging over him, but the curse is going to be here over these Egyptians and Canaanites, who apparently either were hot somehow or lived in a hot place, because well, I suppose Egypt is pretty hot. But you see the play on words that's going on there. Any other comments or questions about all of what we're seeing here about the danger of cursing, about how the curse actually seems fulfilled upon that family? And the blessing also gets fulfilled in the life of Shem and Japheth.
Now you were saying how, people use different words instead of cuss words.
Okay.
Like freaking or something,
Yeah.
or fudge.
Yes.
My wife at times, if I say those words, and my mother even used to tell me, if you're thinking it, you might as well go ahead and say it.
Okay. Now let's think about that. Let's think about that for a minute. Does that mean, Mike, if I'm walking downtown and I see something in a store window that I'd like to have, that I should just go ahead and take it?
You shouldn't.
After you pay for it. Good, Mike. Good.
If you're in California, it's all right.
If you're in California.
Anything under $1,000.
So we have to be careful about acting on our impulses. And I would rather hear somebody say sugar.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay? I would rather hear somebody say that. My mom's got an expression she uses, and it makes the kids laugh. She says, "Oh, golly." The kids just think that's hilarious. But
I think that shows a little respect for when people are around you. At least they have a little bit of respect to say golly or fudge or something in front of you. Instead of, some people just, like we said, just blurt out anything, and that's a lack of respect.
yeah, there's at least a measure of restraint there, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's at least a measure of restraint, which is a good thing. We need restraint.
Bowinkle will be good.
Bowinkle. I haven't tried that one, Jim. I'll give that some thought. Hey, let's jump into chapter 10. Let's get some reading done in chapter 10 here. And because of all of the odd names, I'm just going to do the reading. Okay, folks? Thank you. You're welcome. I won't try to enlist you for this, which is rough. And the map that you have there, which is probably too small to see, and I apologize for that. I couldn't find a black and white map to print off that was in better shape. But you'll see some of these names where these different families spread. And they're talking about the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth and how they went out across the land. So here we go, chapter 10. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. And Susan asked me this the other day. She said, was Canaan born yet? And I said, no. And she said, how do you know? and this is the reason right here. It says that the sons were born to them after the flood. Here we go. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer. So he's digging deeper into the genealogy now. Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the coastland peoples spread in their lands, each with his own language, by their clans in their nations. And I'll just make a couple of observations. Javan is referring to later descendants would be like the Greek people. Kittim is a name, I think, for like the Cretans or something along those lines. It's the people living in that part of the world. Tarshish is what we would call Spain today. So it's on the other end of the Mediterranean. So these are people that were shipping around that Mediterranean area. The sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteka. The sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And we talked about this bit of history earlier on in our studies. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. The land of Shinar is in, not the Mediterranean, but the Mesopotamian area. It's in that part of the world. And Cush is another word for Ethiopia. And Put is also down in that region. Seba and Havilah, those are off on the end of the Arabian Peninsula, I believe, off in that kind of a region. These are descendants of Ham. Let's see. Verse 11, from that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Kala, and Rezin, between Nineveh and Kala. So he's talking about areas between the Tigris and Euphrates River in that area. That is the great city. Egypt fathered Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathrusim, Casluhim, from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorim. Okay, so you're getting a little bit of that background of where these different families come from. Next, Canaan. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth. You remember Tyre and Sidon, that's north of Israel. The Phoenicians is what he's talking about there. And the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Archites, the Sinites. These are all people who settled in the land of Canaan. Israel drives a bunch of these folks out later. The Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Afterward, the clans of the Canaanites dispersed, so they get spread around apparently. Verse 19, and the territory of the Canaanites extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar as far as Gaza. So he's talking all along that coast of the Mediterranean. From north to south, they had settled in that area. Let's see. And in the direction of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim. Okay, this is around the end of the Dead Sea, the south end of the Dead Sea, as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. I'm going to pause there just for a moment. As you're looking at that map, it doesn't take you too far deep into places like Africa or too far off into Europe and Asia. And what Moses is doing is he's recording people that are in and around Israel, that they're influenced by, that would be recognizable among them. So he's not trying to describe every family everywhere. He's more focused than that, okay, in this part of the world. So on we go. Verse 21. To Shem. Okay, so this is from where the Holy Line comes from. Also, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem, Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Aram is another name for the Syrians. If you could know where Syria is on a map, it's that region of the Middle East. Arpachshad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. I think Peleg means division. And his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan fathered Almodad, Sheleph, Hazar Maveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Abimaal, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. The territory in which they lived extended from Mesha in the direction of Sephir to the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. And it's interesting, some of the names repeat, connected with different families. And it might be the case that there's some intermarriage taking place. For example, the family line of Shem has shares some names with the family line of Ham. There may have been some intermarriage that's being referred to here, like they talk about Havilah, and I think that's a name that shows up in both lists. So there might be connections taking place that way. Verse 32. These are the clans of the sons of Noah according to their genealogies in their nations, and from these the nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. So there you're getting a picture of all of that. It's interesting when they study language. Somewhere I had some notes on this. I was going to throw up on the board for you. Here we go.
Thank you for reading that, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Can you imagine being a mother trying to get your names all mixed up with your kids, trying to call your kids these strange names?
Yeah. To us, they're strange, right?
To them, it's not.
To them, they're not. To them, that would be ordinary names. Okay? And often in this early period, and Moses does a lot of this as he's recording Genesis, he'll give you a name and then he'll tell you kind of what's behind the name. Like one of the names he mentioned here was Peleg. Whoops. I think that's supposed to be an E.
We wouldn't know the difference.
And we wouldn't know the difference, but they would have known this. It means division.
There's a soccer player by that name.
Peleg?
Yeah.
Oh, Pele.
Without
You're
the
thinking of Pele.
Get
Yeah.
it straight, Jim.
So if you named one of your kids division, you'd know right away what the word meant, wouldn't you? You'd recognize that. So it's that kind of a situation. All right. Whoops. Got the wandering board here. Come on back. I'm going to illustrate something to you before we get into anything in chapter 11. I'm going to write some different references to different languages up here because the chapter in the next chapter is going to refer to language. And the Hebrew word for mother is imah. The Aramaic, this is further north, word for mother is imah. Okay? These are examples of Semitic languages from Shem. What's the English word for mother? Mother. Mother. English, or we might say ma, right, for short. Okay. What is it in German? Mutter. What is it in French? Mère. So this is German. This is French. What is it in Latin? Mater. And I think the Spanish is similar, but I can't remember what the Spanish is. Say again?
Madre?
Madre. Madre. Good. Yeah, you see the M sound, the A sound. D and T are similar sounds when we make them and form them in our mouths. And then there's an R sound there that comes on the end. So there, you can see right away those words are definitely related. What's the Sanskrit word for mother? I had to look it up too. Okay. It was Mata.
You'll have to excuse me, but what is Sanskrit?
Okay, so what I'm illustrating here is that all of these are related to one another, and we call this the Indo-European family of languages. They are all related to each other. The people who dwell in Europe and the people who dwell in India are related. You maybe have never thought about this. They as they study the history and genealogy and all of that stuff, they think they started in Central Asia and they went this way. Some moved down southward to India, and some moved northward into Europe. The mountains of the region where they believe they came from are the Caucasus, and so they call these people Caucasians. Caucasians. Okay? So you probably got relatives in India and you didn't even know it.
I met
Jim.
this guy the other day, and he said he came from Indo-Europe. He was from Armenia.
Armenia, yes, is in that region.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, real funny name. I couldn't remember it.
Okay. Yeah, they have their own language, their own way. The reason I'm throwing this up here though is to show you the languages all share, when they're talking about a mother, this ma thing. And the people who study languages, linguistics, and this is an example of what they call historical linguistics, they say that this shows that the languages are all related, and they go backward over time. That's why I threw the Sanskrit up here, because it's an ancient language in India. And when the British and all those went over to India and they started studying their ancient texts over there, they were like, whoa, wait a minute. And they saw all these connections to the European languages in there. And they started to realize that the people, especially in northern India, were related to the people in Europe. And the people who study all of this can go further and further and deeper. Some basic words pop out this way, like water, I think, is another one. Bread would be another example of that. They show this common background and heritage of humanity and the languages. I'm doing all of this in part to show you sons of Noah and their descendants were all related, right? And the languages point toward that. It's also important because what's going to happen in the next chapter, Genesis 11? Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel. Go ahead.
They all started out Jewish. Where did all these other religions come from? I understand Christianity.
Yeah. Judaism is actually refers to the later part of the Old Testament and the time between the Testaments. So it comes from, do I have more space on the other side? I think I have more space on the other side. Talk about confusion of languages, huh? So Jewish comes from the name Judean, comes from the tribe of Judah. So it's in that latter part of the Old Testament and the time between the Testaments that we start to get references to a religion called Judaism or Jewish.
Well, Yiddish, is that just Jewish German?
Yiddish is it's a Hebrew language that's been mixed in with European language, and I think a lot of it is German. I think there's a lot of German in it. So there are Jews. If you go to New York and New Jersey, you'll find people who still speak Yiddish, who have that in their heritage. But at the beginning, Adam and Eve, and then we can also say this of Noah and his sons, they all know the true God. They all know who the true God is and what he's asking of them. What happens, though, over time if things aren't kept track of? Things get
mixed up and forgotten.
Things get mixed up and forgotten. Yeah. How many families of the earth knew how to write before modern education was spread around? Very few. Very few. So it would be very easy to get records and everything very confused. If you go to some parts of the world, all the history is kept in the mind of an elder who lives in a hut there in the center of the village. And he knows who the kings were and the different things that happened, and it's all based on his memory because they don't write things down. So it became confused over time. They start out worshiping the one God, and then over time they start worshiping a variety of things. Whatever's powerful in their lives, they turn to with prayer, and then that becomes all these different gods. Another thing that we see happening in religion is respect for the ancestors turns into prayer for to the ancestors, and those ancestors become like gods in the religion that emerges from that. So that does that give you a picture, Brian, of what happened over time? Yeah, and that's where all of these different ideas and religions came from over time. They lost the belief and understanding of there's one God who's loving us and guiding us, and they started turning to all these other ways of religion. Other questions? Jim?
I was just gonna say, over a period of time, the person that lives in the hut, he doesn't explain it to somebody else, he dies and it's lost
Yeah.
completely, you can't read it.
Yeah.
How in the world could they remember? You know,
Yeah.
It's gotta be lost. It's, you know, from generation to generation to generation orally. And they can't remember everything.
They can't remember everything?
Well, even in your own family, if you don't, like my sister, she knows genealogy real well. I don't. So I lose it, but she's got it, so I know she's got it. But what happens if that's gone?
So, Joe, complete this sentence for me.
By the time he gets over there, it'll be different.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance.
No, complete it for me.
Oh, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
How could you remember all of that?
But that's just a short compared to all this. I mean, that's just like a pea compared to all of it.
But Joe, I'll bet if I picked out some other texts like that, maybe songs you heard when you were growing up, you'd be able to sing along, wouldn't you?
Maybe.
I'm not going to test you. I'm not going to test you. It's amazing how much the memory can hold. It's amazing what they actually can hold if you take steps to learn it and hold on to it. Just as you spit out that Pledge of Allegiance like a patriot. I salute you. Jim, go ahead.
How can people live so close together and have such different languages? Look in Europe.
Oh,
The French, the Germans, Hungarians. I mean, they're living around top of each other.
yeah. They're actually not that different, though. When you start setting them down side by side and looking at the words and stuff like that, you see a lot of overlap. There's a lot of shared words and expressions and all of that in the cultures.
We've taken a lot of words in our language, too, from other people.
Oh yeah, English borrowed from everybody.
Yeah.
Was looking at something about English history the other day. Starts out with the Celts, and then the Romans show up, and then who comes after the Romans? The Irish invade Scotland. The Vikings come in. The Jutes, Angles, and Saxons from Germany. I mean, it's a mess. English is a mess. Everybody's been to England.
It's supposed to be one of the toughest languages.
They say that it's one of the hardest languages for people who are not native English speakers to learn because of this very factor. So, tomorrow, next time. Yeah, tomorrow you won't be here. But next time we will be talking about Genesis chapter 11, and we'll finish up that. And that's the first part of Genesis. And this is what I want to do. I want to take a break from Genesis. And I think we should maybe do something like study 2 Peter, which I've not done with you before. So we'll take a number of weeks to do that. And then we're going to come back and do the family histories in Genesis. Okay, so we're going to take a little break because, well, it's been pretty intense getting through these first 11 chapters of Genesis. I'm going to come back when we do the family history and do a different style of teaching. We're going to be looking at big chunks of stuff together and not going verse by verse as I've done here with the first part of Genesis. Let's bow our heads in a closing prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we praise you that we are one big family created in your image to be, as you will it, your dear children. We thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who has taken the divided and disparate families of the world, of the nations, and brought them together under one name, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, making us again your children. Amen.